Hello there, I'm just after getting off the phone with Daniel Kinahan. He's just informed me that the biggest fight in British boxing history has just been agreed. Get up there, my boy! Big shout out, Dan. He got this done, literally over the line. 2-fight deal. Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua next year. One problem, I've just got to smash Deontay Wilder's face right in the next fight. And then we go into the Joshua fight next year. So there we are. The Gypsy King versus AJ is on for next year, but there's a hurdle in the road called the Bronze Bomber, aka the Knockout King, and I will get onto him and knock him spark out, and then we got on to the big fight. So big thank you, Dan, for getting this deal over the line. All the best. God bless you all. See you soon. Peace out.
Main man, made man here. Y'all know how I get down. We talking boxing, man. So it seems as if the word on the curb is that Daniel Kinahan, the main figure who has been mentioning as of late as been the main orchestrator behind the scenes for the possible or potential upcoming fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Well, Mr. Daniel Kinahan has been ousted as in his position as advisor to KHK Sports. Now, this story here is actually very, very significant if you ask me. The question once we get to the end of this vid will be, is Mr. Daniel Kinahan really off the scene or really hands off with this situation? Or is it just that publicly a lot of entities are trying to save face at this moment and they're trying to make it publicly as if Mr. Kinahan is not involved? You decide. First off, for anybody asks, main man, what is KHK Sports? It said KHK Sports is a sports conglomerate that holds several sports properties, including MMA, boxing, racing, wrestling, cricket, and things like that. KHK Sports was founded by Sheikh Khalid bin Hamid Al Khalifa, and he is the fifth son of the Bahraini king, King Hamid. Apart from being a member of the royal family, he is also a military officer with the rank of major, the first deputy chairman of the Supreme Council for Youth and Sports as well. He's also that as well. So he has a lot of heavy titles, this particular Sheikh, or you may call him the Prince. It said also that Sheikh Khalid had a very hands-on role, if you will, in recruiting for the MMA side of KHK MMA. He had a very heavy hand in recruiting in there, where he recruited Conor McGregor's coach, John Kavanagh. He recruited prominent UFC fighters like former lightweight champion Frankie Edgar, current champ Nurmagomedov, and he recruited them to join their upstart in Bahrain. And those who chose to join KHK MMA, they were given access to elite resources at no cost, including medical coverage, which is a rare deal in the combat sports realm. So he is really trying to shake and move here. You know what I'm saying? It says soon after that KHK MMA founded what's called Brave CF. And the promotion enjoyed significant growth. It hosted shows in Brazil, India, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Indonesia, Colombia. They were all over the place with their MMA fight fans, all over the place. Developing certain little markets across the Middle East and Northern Africa, they were shaking and moving. Now, It also states that KHK Sports also is an organization that also operates as an extension of the government agenda. It is a tool for diplomacy and improved bilateral relations between Bahrain and other countries, and a distraction against ongoing human rights concerns. So they are looking to basically use KHK, if you will, it's KHK Sports, as a way to soothe the image of the country, of Bahrain. They want to use this to reach out to the world and not have the world talk about all the human rights concerns and different distractions that they've been going through. They don't want people talking about the 8 years that followed in 2011, the Arab Spring protests. They don't want people talking about the Arab Spring protests, in which the Bahrainis' Shia Islam majority population revolt against the centuries-old Sunni monarchy. That was going on. So all of these things are going on, and they want to smooth over their image. This is the same thing that we also heard from Saudi Arabia when Eddie Hearn attempted to do Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua, and it stated that the Saudis were willing to put up so much money because they didn't want to have people talking about, say, like the war next door that they were having in Yemen. So it was a distraction tactic. So the one thing you got to keep in mind amongst all of this is that a lot of this stuff is about image. It's about image. You know, the Bahraini, the Kingdom of Bahrain, they want to have their image to the world in a positive light, and they want to use sports to put on massive events, bring some of the biggest and best events that they can get their hands on, and to make people forget. Now you got to remember, the KHK Sports works hand in hand with the government of Bahrain. Now you go over to Mr. Daniel Kinahan. Mr. Daniel Kinahan, who has been said to be identified in court as an organized crime boss, if you will. He runs what's said the Kinahan cartel. And we all know the story of Mr. Daniel Kinahan because we've told it several times here on the channel. He linked up with Matthew Macklin. They made MGM. MGM eventually turned into a promoting and boxing outfitter, a boxing management arm, if you will, in which along the time they started to promote fights. One of their fights got shot up called Clash of the Clans. MGM was sold to Miss Sandra Vaughn and her crew, which would then change the name to MTK Global. And the rest is history. So Mr. Kinahan, who's stated that, they're saying that he's out from KHK Sports, people may wonder, well, how did he find his way to KHK Sports? Well, after the sale of MGM, after the 2016 situation played out, the Clash of the Clans and the shootout that happened at the weigh-in of one of MGM's fights. After that, the Kinahan cartel, they went on a heavy retaliatory measure. The thing is that it said that shootout at that fight was retaliation from a rival gang called the Hutch gang. And that was a retaliatory shooting in which caused the Kennigan's gang to retaliate also. And this retaliation is said to have led to over 18 deaths. So that moment in time right there was like the key moment that pushed Mr. Kinahan underground. And Mr. Kinahan then, if you fast forward, I'm going to skip over some things, but if you fast forward, you got to wonder, how did he end up in the Middle East next to the prince? A guy that stated that he's supposed to be running this big crime family and this big organized crime function and everything like that. All of, retaliatory gangs and all. How does the guy like this get next to royalty? And not to mention become such a major figure in the boxing world? Well, that's one of the questions that I had as well. Because from what I researched, Mr. Kinahan had issues. After the sale of MGM and it turned to MTK, he had some issues. And those issues during this retaliatory period was he started having breaks in his own ranks. And he started to not trust a lot of the guys out of Ireland, where Mr. Kinahan was from. He started to not trust a lot of these guys. Also, the Kinahan cartel is based in Spain. So it stated that the Spanish police, the Irish government officials and politicians, the Irish media, a lot of these different things is the thing that pushed Mr. Kinahan to take himself to the Middle East. And while he was there at the Middle East, well, guess what? Got next to KHK Sports. Now, it's also known that Mr. Kinahan, Even though it said that he sold MGM, which now called MTK Global, to Sandra Vaughn, it's also stated that Mr. Kinahan advises a lot of the MTK Global fighters. Now, this is where his power comes in at, right here. See, he's not exactly on MTK's payroll. He doesn't own it no more, and he's not on, and they're not paying him. But he advises the fighters, such as like Al Heyman does, in which, though MTK Global may not pay him, they may end up paying the fighters, and the fighters end up paying him. So one way or another, Mr. Kinahan still has his grips into MTK Global thoroughly. You know what I'm saying? Thoroughly. So not to mention, if you look at where MTK Global is based out of, you'll see he has his hand right in that whole area. But anyway, so when you ask yourself, why did the KHK Sports decide to work with this figure? Well, according to KHK Sports at the time, they said the decision to work with Kinahan is an opportunity for KHK Sports to expand its global footprint and make significant moves within the boxing realm. It should also be noted that the organization also announced a separate partnership with MTK Global to bring combat sports events to the Middle East. While MTK has claimed to have parted ways with Kinahan several years ago, it now appears that all three entities, Kinahan, KHK Sports, and MTK Global, will be working together in the coming future. That's the glue. That's the glue. See, Mr. Kinahan went to the royal family, I'm sure, and went to KHK Sports, and I'm sure, and they realized how much power he has over so many boxers, how much control or much of the ears that he has of so many boxers. Keep in mind, all of the fighters and everyone that Mr. Kinahan advises, they love the man. We've seen Tyson Fury come out proclaiming his love for the man. We've seen Billy Joe Saunders coming out proclaiming his love for the man. They all love him. And all of these MTK fighters love Daniel Kinahan. And MTK fighters are now featured on several networks, whether it be ESPN, whether it be Sky Sports, whether it be Queensberry. So Mr. Kinahan is in a very good position. So when we wonder why KHK Sports possibly brought Daniel Kinahan into their fold, well, this is the reason. The man got tentacles everywhere. You think about this. It's stated that this summit, this new global MTK Global Leadership Summit, where it's supposed to be bringing different people from the boxing world, like Frank Warren and Bob Arum and people from different networks and different fighters all coming together and meeting up in the Middle East. And it's stated that this thing will still go on despite Mr. Kinahan's departure. But it was Mr. Kinahan is the one that orchestrated this whole thing. Remember, when you go to their website of MTK Global and all of the people that are going to attend this summit, they all were giving credit to Mr. Kinahan. Oh, tell Daniel, thank Daniel for being there. Tell Daniel, I'm glad to be invited by him. I mean, they all had nothing but great things to say about Mr. Daniel Kinahan. And they were all invited by him. So he orchestrated this. So it seems as if that Mr. Kinahan, in his advisory role, well, he was doing just fine by KHK Sports. He had the who's who of boxing all in one room. He was bringing them to the Middle East. He was bringing the attention. He had Joshua and Fury on board, where you know how hard it is for Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn to do business. They got it done in the snap of a finger, almost. The guy got juice. You got Bob Arum running around despite Mr. Kinahan's reputation, blabbering all over TV. He's working with him. You see what I'm saying? The thing is that you got to wonder, how did such a notorious guy get next to the royal family? You're going to tell me that no one knew who Mr. Kinahan really was or what he was involved with, allegedly? They knew. They knew this from the jump, fight fans. They just wasn't, I don't think, aware that it would get out at such a high noise. No one was. When Bob Arum came out and legitimized it, he has possibly been the highest figure here in America to come out and speak the man's name publicly like that. And that's what started the avalanche. This prompted Sandra Vaughn, the now owner of MTK Global, this prompted her to come out and say, hey, MTK Global doesn't work with them. They had to distance themselves away from him immediately because they were scared of the reputation that it brings to their country, their company, allegedly. But yet, Daniel Kinahan still advises the fighters. KHK hears the noise. It's being reported everywhere that the Irish politicians, different politicians in Ireland, I believe it was Mr. Stephen Farry, I think that was his name. He's been sending messages to the UK. He's sending messages to all of these different governments, like, do not allow Mr. Kinahan in. He's reaching out to the who's who of boxing, saying, how are you guys dealing with this guy? There's even a lot of fans who come on my channel and say, well, main man, do you know what this man was involved in? All of the carnage, all of the bloodshed, all of the families that's lost so many people. I mean, it's reported that 18 people died after 2016. And it was said that by the hands of the Kinahan cartel. So, you know, they're saying, and these politicians, they've been putting their foot on the gas and going to all of these different governments and government entities and saying, what are you guys doing? Do you know who you're dealing with? Yes, he doesn't have a criminal record. He's never been charged. He's never been convicted of anything. Yes, but we know who he is. And the Irish government has been going around to different governments and ensuring that Mr. Kinahan stays on the ground. They do not want him to lift his head up. They don't want no one to legitimize him. So KHK Sports, well, we know their mission is to run a squeaky clean operation to keep your eyes off all the other atrocities. Well, we don't need nobody in the mix that's going to bring more bad press to us. So we're going to have to go ahead and cut ties with Mr. Kinahan. He's in a very powerful position. But you've seen this, what I just read to y'all. The KHK Sports and MTK Global deal will go on. If Mr. Kinahan is advising the fighters, he's still in the mix, right? Just not officially part of the company. The same way that he did with MTK Global. I mean, as an advisor to KHK Sports or whatever that means, an advisor. If he still is advising the fighters, right? The only thing that he can't do at this point for KHK is actually maybe go out and find certain things. I don't know how that's going to really work. I think his relationship will still be in place, though. A relationship just isn't ruined just like that. We can't do it publicly, but we can do things behind closed doors. The man's orchestrated Joshua and Fury at the snap of a finger. How could the Bahraini government not be happy with those kind of results? I would never understand. Now, my question is, does Bahrain may look at them and say, look at Mr. Kinahan and say, do we need you? Now, I would think that they do, because it's Mr. Kinahan that can go to Tyson Fury and say, Tyson Fury, we're not accepting anything. I advise you not to take any of these deals. It's Mr. Kinahan who can shut that down. They would possibly do well to stay on his good side, right? Right or wrong. Now, I just don't know, man. I just don't know. Now, the thing is also key about KHK Sports is that they are the money. When Mr. Kinahan, what makes it so easy for him to go out and bring all of these entities together in this fashion, what makes it so easy for him to put everybody in one room is the fact that he has access to large amounts of money. And he has also access and can grant access to a whole new market. I mean, you're talking oil money. You're talking KHK Sports, who's in this for image purposes, to revamp their image and to change things. And they want to put on big events, no matter the cost in a lot of cases. That is music to a promoter's ears. Music. My thing is Mr. Kinahan's as effective in bringing people together without access to that money? But I just don't think the access to that money will be cut off. I just don't think so. I think publicly they will say that. Sure. I mean, you had Bob Arum out here saying that that's our guy. That is top ranks advisor in the Middle East. Because they know how much money he got access to by sitting right next to KHK Sports. They know this. But my thing is, does he have that same access? And if he does, they'll love him. They'll still continue to prop him up and try to continue to legitimize. And this was another effort for Mr. Daniel Kinahan. And I think it was a concerted effort this time around because everybody came out at the same time of them trying to legitimize Mr. Kinahan. All image. He wants to change his image just like KHK Sports do. They like two peas in a pod. They can work hand in hand. They both got the same agenda. Mr. Kinahan wants to change his name. And the Kingdom of Bahrain, they wants to change their image. It was a win-win. So my question is, I wonder what this bears off on Terrence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao. Now, as far as the AJ and Fury fight, it's saying it's going to still go forward if Fury still defeats Deontay Wilder, and that's a big if. If that happens, if it's just that easy where that's just going to go forward, the MTK Global Summit is still going to go forward. If I find it very, very hard to believe that Mr. Kinahan still will not be in the mix, advising these fighters. That is one thing that the Irish government, that is the one thing that KHK Sports, not even MTK Global, whom I still believe that Mr. Kinahan is behind the scenes pretty much really running, but no one can stop him from advising the fighters. So on one end, to KHK, he got fighters and he can make big fights happen in your country. And on the other end, to the promoters, well, I got access to money. So I can bring all the money that you need to put your fights on. That's the position that he's in. We'll see if this thing is real talk and if the relationship between him and the Middle East is really strained or not, or if this is just talk, put it out to the public to make everyone believe that they are no longer working with Mr. Kinahan. But behind the scenes, they're very much still working with him. Just in ways that, well, we got to cut a corner here and there. He advises the fighters. Cool. We can't pay him, but we can pay the fighters. And the fighters, y'all can pay him. You know what I'm talking about? We'll see how this works out, man. So I hope, we'll see how this plays out for the future. A lot of people, like I told you, man, have came to the channel and was like, man, do you know how treacherous this dude is? And we've had this conversation before of how there's been a lot of bad players in boxing, how there's a lot of dirty money in boxing, even to this day. That has never, ever changed. You know what I mean? I take that like peanut butter and jelly. It go hand in hand with boxing fight fans. Mob money, stuff like that, always been involved in the sport of boxing. If you think it just happened this year, I don't know where you've been. This is something new. But I understand what people's feeling behind this is. Monsters like this, when they lift their ugly head. There's a lot of monsters, though, in boxing, man, that y'all don't even know. Y'all don't even know who are part of a lot of these groups and investment groups. Man, y'all just don't know. Y'all just don't know. But I understand where y'all coming from, man. So we'll see how this plays out, man. But much love to the fam, man. Thumbs up on the way out if you didn't hit it on the way in. And all day, man. All love to the fam. And to the next one, man. Peace out.